Hello, this is Jennifer Curry, one of the Language Arts Coordinators at the San Diego County Office of Education, and I am going to show you how to use Karin Hess's Learning Progressions Framework to create an assessment tool. The goal of this screencast is for you to be able to design your own reading assessment tool that is aligned to Common Core state standards. So we will start by viewing an example of a reading assessment that I developed. Then I will provide you an overview of Hess's Learning Progressions Framework for ELA and Literacy, the resource that I used to develop the reading assessment. Next, I will model a process that I used in 2 steps. Step 1 is to gather the information I needed from the Learning Progressions Framework. And step 2 is to use that information to design a reading assessment tool that students can use. Our purpose is really around how to use the Learning Progressions Framework to develop a reading assessment tool that will ultimately be used by students so that they can gain clarity about what they are learning, how they will go about the learning, and why the learning is important. And once students have clarity about the what, why, and how of what they're supposed to be learning, then they will be able to better gain control over their own learning. So let's start with the example. Here's an assessment tool that I created that drills down specifically into the way a student can use strategies to comprehend text. I have established a clear learning purpose or learning intention with a guiding question. And here is the guiding question. This assessment tool also has a clear set of directions that establishes what students are expected to do and, more importantly, why. And there those are for you. This assessment tool also provides an opportunity for student choice where students are able to invent their own rating system to indicate their confidence level and which strategies they attempted and did not attempt. And I have provided clear success criteria that is based on the 9th and 10th grade standards that state specifically what students can do to meet the learning intention. In this case, what grade appropriate strategies can students use to better understand text? Let's take a closer look at the success criteria. Imagine that I've created this assessment tool well before I sit down to plan my lessons. How might I use the success criteria to inform what I teach? I would pause the screencast here to think about that or discuss with a colleague. The success criteria can be used to help teachers plan lessons and determine a student's learning path. This is what the authors of the Learning Progressions Framework would say is an example of a way to focus instructional emphasis for the learning. In other words, the success criteria would help me figure out what to teach. I could use any one of these criteria to model during a demonstration lesson or provide guided and independent practice to a whole class or small group. This success criteria is in the form of a self-assessment tool, but I could also use the language and other forms of assessment. For example, I could turn these descriptors into a rubric. All of the information that is on the self-assessment tool is from the Learning Progressions Framework, which leads to our next destination, which is to provide you an orientation to the framework itself. The Learning Progressions Framework is organized into 7 strands. The assessment tool that we just looked at is based on strand 4, reading informational text, making meaning at the text level. Here is strand 4 as it is portrayed in the framework. The strand is listed and defined in the white box at the top of the page. There are learning targets for that strand in the shaded boxes that span from elementary through middle and high school. And there are progress indicators that are listed underneath the grade spans. Each progress indicator has standards listed below them in blue that are pulled from different Common Core strands of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language. Here's a little more information for you about the strand, the learning target, the progress indicators, and the standards. Clearly, this document is organized to demonstrate the progressions across grade spans, but we are going to use this framework for a different purpose. Now that you have a general awareness of the progressions framework, let me show you how I used it to develop a reading assessment tool. First, I will choose only one progress indicator from the framework. Second, I will open a document to copy and paste the strand, the learning target, performance indicator, and the standards so that I can see them all on one page. From there, I will develop my assessment tool. So let's start with step 1. I will choose High School, Reading Informational Text, Progress Indicator A. And here is how it reads. You might also note how the standards come from various Common Core strands. For grades 9-10, we will use Reading Informational Text, Standard 4, Language Standards 4 and 5A, and Speaking and Listening Standard 2. Next, I need to copy all of this information onto one page. So here you can see the strand, the learning target, the progress indicator, and all of the standards. Now that I have this on one page, it's time to analyze the information. How might I use this information to create an assessment tool that focuses on the progress indicator? You might want to pause the screencast to think about that or discuss with a colleague. It will also give you an opportunity to review the standards in more detail. The standards can be used to help me determine my success criteria that will better enable me to let the students know exactly what they are supposed to do to meet the performance indicator, or create an assessment tool, as we saw earlier, to guide students to set goals or reflect on their learning. So to review, I can use the progress indicator to set my learning intention for the self-assessment. I can use the standards to define the success criteria. As I'm developing the assessment tool, I might look at the strand and the learning target to clarify why this type of learning is important, not only for myself, but also for the students. Now that I have shown you how I use the Learning Progressions framework to gather the information that I need, it's time to design the assessment tool. Your assignment has a link to a Google Doc. Let's go ahead and preview the document that shows you my process for drafting and revising the tool. Note that this document presents several drafts. I've also inserted comments to make my thinking visible. When you click on the comment, notice how the text that the comment is referring to is highlighted for you in a brighter yellow. There's this comment. All right, so what have we done? My aim in this screencast was to provide for you a process for how to use Karin Hess's Learning Progressions Framework for ELA and Literacy to design an assessment tool that will make the learning goal and a pathway to achieve that goal visible to students. Thank you for your time.